Well, good evening and welcome to the Pete Maravich Assembly Center. I'm Zach Ewing. This is the LSU Sports Insider postgame show. We have just witnessed a demolition in the second half. It was a track meet in the first half. It was a demolition derby in the second half. LSU defeats Florida State 101-71 here in the second round of the NCAA Women's Basketball Tournament. LSU advances to its third consecutive Sweet 16. We'll be joined here at the PMAC shortly by Advocate women's basketball beat writer Reed Darcy. Also here, TJ Brown and Scott Rabalais. They're going to stop by for a few minutes as we dissect what we just saw. As I said, one of the more entertaining games of the year in the first half. LSU led 50-49. Then they absolutely they ran with Florida State in the first half. They ran away from Florida State in the second half. A 31-6 third quarter and just a complete rout after that. LSU wins 101-71. And they will advance to the Sweet 16. So this is the LSU Sports Insider postgame show. We are brought to you by Our Lady of the Lake Health. They are the championship healthcare provider of LSU athletics. I'm Zach Ewing, and we're going to be with you for the next 30, 45 minutes here as we go through this one. Lots of stars for LSU. I think if I had told you that Tania Latson, Florida State's leading scorer, would have 30-plus points, and that LSU's star, Flau'jae Johnson, would have only, what did she finish with, 13 points, 11 points, you would probably think she had 13 points. You'd probably think LSU was in trouble. But it was exactly the opposite, as LSU got big games from three other players, particularly Mikayla Williams, who was 10 of 12 from the floor with 28 points, and Samaya Smith, 9 of 9 from the floor, 20 points and 12 rebounds, and then also Anissa Morrow, 26 points and 12 rebounds. You score 26 points and have 12 rebounds, and you're like the second or third fiddle. That's a pretty good offensive night. So we knew the Seminoles would try to run with LSU. That worked for a little while. It did not work for 4 quarters. It did not work for 3 quarters. And LSU just completely took control of this thing in the third quarter. As I said, they led 50-49 at halftime. And just annihilated them. I mean, it was 64-55 about 3.5 minutes into that third quarter. And from that point, LSU ended the third quarter on a 17-0 run. They led 81-55 at the end of the third. They extended that into the fourth quarter from the 6:33 mark of the third quarter to the 6:32 mark of the fourth quarter. So basically exactly a quarter. Florida State scored 2 points. They scored 2 points. Now, that's cherry picking. I'm picking the exact second they scored buckets on either end of that. But for basically an entire quarter, they scored 2, while LSU scored more than 30. And that turned this game from a really entertaining, high-intensity battle into an absolute rout. And LSU is in the Sweet 16 for the third time. Rarely have we seen Kim Mulkey happier, maybe outside of winning national championships. She was pumped up. She's given fist bumps at the end. And she was giving hugs to a lot of her players who were coming off the floor in garbage time, getting goodbyes, all of that kind of stuff. And it was a virtuoso performance from LSU. They seemed to be peaking at the right time. We mentioned Mikayla Williams, who had just a spectacular night with 28 points. She and Samaya Smith had 48 points on combined 19 of 21 shooting. And not only that, but Mikayla Williams and Flau'jae Johnson, who were both nursing injuries coming into the NCAA tournament, got limited minutes Saturday night against San Diego State in a blowout, and they were able to get limited minutes tonight. Kim Mulkey was able to limit their minutes, especially Johnson's minutes. She actually didn't play the last, 7 minutes of the first half, and finished with, just 20 minutes. Mikayla Williams had 23, and just was dynamite. So we are waiting on Reed Darcy to come in, as well as Scott Rabalais and TJ Brown here live from the PMAC as LSU defeats Florida State 101-71. This thing started, like it was shot out of a cannon. Florida State won the opening tip. Tania Latson sped to the basket and scored the first 2 points of the game within 5-6 seconds. I think TJ Brown was sitting next to me. He said we had 4 shots in the first 36 seconds of the game. Teams weren't shooting well right at first, but they did actually start to shoot well. And just, I mean, super impressive for LSU. They took an early lead. They went on a, I think, 11-0 run to take a 17-10 lead. Florida State fought back. Florida State, I think, actually briefly took the lead at one point in the second quarter. Kind of went back and forth. LSU led 50-49 at half, and then, as I said, just took control in the second half. See the comment from Alan Levy saying have to be dominant throughout the whole game to win the next 2 games. Yeah, I mean, LSU's had consistency problems all year long playing 4 quarters. I would say they played pretty close to a complete 4 quarters tonight. I mean, I know that second quarter was a little bit of a lull, but for one thing, that's with Flau'jae Johnson and Michaela Williams both on the bench with 2 fouls for the last 5 minutes, and Kim Mulkey decided to keep them out. And I thought that was a key that they were able to maintain the lead right into halftime. They had to feel pretty good about it. And Reed Darcy is here. He's clipping on his mic right now, so we're going to get him on. So that, the second quarter, a little bit of a lull, but you keep the lead. You're playing without your stars. And the other 3 quarters, LSU was utterly dominant. So we'll talk about the matchup with NC State and then the other teams in the Spokane regional after that. But bringing on Reed Darcy.
Hello.
He's better dressed than I am.
Oh, no, you look sharp.
It's a good look. It's the cream-colored suit. And like LSU put on, I don't know if it was their best performance of the season, but one of them at exactly the right time.
I was thinking back, and I was looking at it. I was trying to figure out if that's something we can say, if that's their best performance of the season. What I was thinking about was, won the game on Saturday against San Diego State, obviously. And then I thought back to the win over Oklahoma. I believe they scored 107 points that night. But also, Oklahoma scored 100 points. You held Florida State, you held Florida State, which has the number 2 scoring offense in the country. You held them to 71 points on 36% shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, really, really impressive. Before tonight, Florida State was averaging 87 points a game. So defensively, like the offense is going to take all the headlines, I think, as it should, but they were really good defensively.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting there thinking at halftime, and it's 50-49. So obviously we're on pace for both teams to essentially score 100 points. Whichever team plays a little defense is going to win this game, and LSU played a lot of defense in that third quarter.
Third quarter, they forced Florida State into 6 turnovers, and that really felt like that's what got them rolling, right? The transition offense was going. They were getting passes, outlet passes out to players around the rim. There was this one sequence that sticks with me. It was Cheyenne Day-Wilson dribbling the ball up. She no-look pass to Samaya, who's streaking down the middle of the floor, and Samaya Smith, who was awesome tonight, by the way. She grabs the pass, takes a couple steps, and then kicks it out to Michaela in the corner for a 3. So I think that play was kind of the game in a nutshell, in the third quarter in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk some individuals since you mentioned them. You got to start with Michaela Williams, who, I mean, I know Flau'jae Johnson got a lot of the headlines coming into this season. Michaela Williams has proven herself to be a superstar. And on the biggest stage, she did it tonight. 9 of 12 from the floor, 28 points up. 10 of 12, yeah. I've given the numbers a couple of times, but not only that, it felt like she was controlling this game. In a game, by the way, with the nation's leading scorer wearing the other uniform.
Yeah, and Michaela didn't play the entire second quarter. She was in foul trouble. And so for her to come out in the third quarter, and I think she had maybe 12 points in the third quarter or something, for her to do that after sitting the entire second quarter and then going into halftime, she could have been cold. She could have lost her rhythm, but she didn't. And this is one of her best performances of the season. I mean, she's gone over 30 a few times this year, but when you think about the 20 points, the 10 of 12, all 3 of her 3-pointers, she's shooting it really well from 3-point range this tournament. She had a couple in the win over San Diego State. She had 3 in the win over San Diego State. So the fact that she's in a groove and shooting it as well as she is just another positive sign for LSU.
Yeah, and I mean, then you move on to Anissa Morrow, who had 26 and 12, and Samaya Smith, who had her double-double as well, and 9 of 9 from the floor. Like that, we can wonder about some of the players. That's got to be Samaya Smith's best game, maybe, of her career.
Yes, absolutely. And it reminded me of the Samaya we saw before she tore up her knee at the start of last season. Right, that was her true sophomore year, and she really got off on a strong start to that season. She looked like one of LSU's best players, and she looked like she was kind of becoming a star. And then after 7 games, they go to the Cayman Islands, and she tears her knee up. And ever since then, I think she's been trying to rediscover what she had done in those 7 games before she got hurt. And so it's been a slow process. It took a whole lot of rehab all last year, and it took a lot of ups and downs this season. But I think, it finally happened. She finally showed exactly what she can do, what she's capable of doing, and it happened to come in a really important game.
Yeah, and that's not to take away from Flage or any of the other. Like, everybody seemed to play well tonight, but
Samaya had 6 assists. Like, she had 20, 20, 12, and 6 assists. She went 9 of 9 from the field. Yeah, that's 3 steals as well. So,
if this game was closer, she could have been on triple-double watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anissa could have too. I mean, Anissa was 26, 11, and 7, on 12 of 21 shooting. I think she was really good. And what stuck out to me is that Anissa did a good job of passing to Samaya. When she would get the ball in the paint, Florida State would send a couple defenders at her, and she would always make the right read, make the right pass. Some beautiful passes from her tonight, so that's another thing that stood out to me as well.
Boy, what was Kim Mulkey like in the post game read? Because she seemed, I made the comment, as non-Final Four edition, as happy as I think I've ever seen her.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was actually in the LSU locker room,
okay.
So I didn't get to see.
We'll have to ask TJ that.
Yeah, but the vibes around this team are good, and I think they think they're playing their best basketball this season right now.
We should also, the PMAC was rocking tonight. I mean, we got to mention that. This place was on fire, especially those first 3 quarters when the game was in doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, were just incredible.
There was a 5 o'clock tip on a Monday too. I mean, I'm sure people had to take off work early, come to the PMAC, and it was kind of a similar weird tip-off time on Saturday. It was 9:15. This time it was 5. I think the crowd was a little late arriving, but by the time the first quarter was over, I mean, they were fully into it. As I was spending the city.
Yeah, I was a little worried. In here like 4 o'clock, 4:15, barely anybody in here. I mean, you're like, man, this. But it was late arriving, and as you said, 5 o'clock on a Monday. It's kind of hard to get here early, but this place was exploding on those LSU runs in the first half, and especially in that third quarter. So, shout out to the crowd. And I mean, honestly, I don't know how you could say any differently. Like, LSU is playing its best basketball right now. If we're just, we talked about the risk that Kim Mulkey and her staff took by sitting Michaela Williams, sitting Flage Johnson. I'm sorry, Nisa Morrow, and in the SEC tournament, and in late in the regular season, and they lost some games, and it didn't seem like they were peaking for the tournament. But boy, you look at this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking back at it, and I was looking at Florida State, and I was thinking how Florida State could be dangerous, since they have such a good offense, and they play so fast. And I was thinking, like, what if LSU hadn't lost those 2 games to Alabama and Ole Miss? Would they have been a 2 seed instead of a 3 seed? And if they were a 2 seed, would they be playing a 7 seed in the second round as opposed to a really dangerous 6 seed Florida State that was probably a little underseeded, right? And I looked at that game. NC State played Michigan State earlier. NC State's a 2 seed in LSU's region. Michigan State is a 7 seed in LSU's region. And NC State just blew their doors off, right? They drilled them. So I was thinking, I was expecting Florida State to give LSU a real fight, and I was wondering, what if they had gotten the 2 seed?
Did they cost themselves?
Exactly. Would they have a more favorable matchup in the second round? So we saw through 2 quarters, it looked like it was going to be a battle, but then that third quarter was just so overwhelming that LSU just coasted to a win and coasted into the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I mean, to get this win and to not have to overuse those recovering players.
Yeah.
Flage played, 20 minutes? Some of that was foul trouble.
Nisa played 34. Flage played 20. Michaela played 22.
So you're going to be – and I mean, like, we should mention this is, for Sweet 16 standards, this is a pretty quick turnaround. I mean, LSU only gets 3 days off. They play Friday in Spokane, Washington. That means they probably got to leave Wednesday. It's a long flight, obviously. And then you get a practice in Thursday in Spokane, and you're playing. And I'm going to guess, since UCLA is in the other game out there, they're getting the late game. That probably means LSU's getting the first game Friday. Maybe 4 o'clock local time out there in Washington. We don't have the tip-off time yet, but it'll be something like that. Like, usually you can kind of breathe after you get through to the Sweet 16. That's not really the case here.
The players in the locker room were talking about how they had about 2 weeks to breathe, after the SEC tournament ended. I think if you watched them in the SEC tournament, you said that, hey, they look kind of spent. We said this on the podcast. They look kind of drained, especially without Flage, and especially when Anissa went down early in the second half of the semifinal game. But clearly they did something over those 2 weeks, or maybe they didn't do something over those 2 weeks to get themselves refreshed and re-energized, because both of these games, the win over San Diego State and the win tonight, they were just clicking on all cylinders. They were crisp, they were sharp, playing almost mistake-free basketball. And it just goes to show that long layoff really helped them. It helped Flage especially, but it really helped the whole team. And now, because these two NCAA tournament wins have been so convincing and by such a wide margin, now the 3 stars are going to have pretty manageable workloads to build on and take into the Sweet 16. I think if you think of like a baseball analogy, they haven't thrown a lot of pitches.
Right.
Save them for.
Yeah, you got fresh arms.
Yeah, fresh arms.
I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but let's look ahead just briefly, and we're going to have shows on this all week. LSU plays NC State. You talk about a 3 seed costing, like it couldn't have worked out a whole lot better, because they get to play a team now that they've already beaten in December by 17 points. It's a different game. NC State's played really well. They tied, I think, for the ACC championship in the regular season. They're playing much better. You mentioned their game against Michigan State. They were shooting the ball really well today. They're playing much better. But it's not like you're facing a team you don't think you can beat, because you've done it already. And then, Ole Miss, who beat LSU the last week of the regular season's on the other half of the bracket, probably you'd think you're going to face UCLA if you make it through the regional final. But
you can pencil in UCLA, but I do think Ole Miss is going to give them a fight.
Yeah. Either way, that'll be a tough game. But to me, UCLA, if you have to play a 1 seed, they're the least experienced in this tournament. They've obviously got a lot more size than the teams LSU is used to facing. That, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but no game in the Elite Eight is easy. And so if you can get there, I like the way this bracket sets up.
UCLA is the overall number 1 seed, but a lot of people thought that they should not have been the overall number 1 seed. A lot of people thought that South Carolina might have been over them, USC might have been over them. So I think it's not exactly your standard, your normal dominant 1 seed where they're just head and shoulders above everybody else. I think LSU got a pretty good break, avoiding obviously South Carolina, Texas, which was always going to be sent out to the other side. I think they did well to avoid USC as well. Now you don't have to deal with Juju Watkins until the Final Four in Tampa. Now you get to play, assuming the bracket holds, you get to play a UCLA team that you beat in the Sweet 16 last year. Different teams. This LSU team doesn't have Angel Reese, but this LSU team is playing better basketball now this year than it was at this point last year.
Yeah. Reed, tilt your mic up just a little bit. We just got a comment that you're a little quiet, so we'll see if we can get that pointed towards you. But I mean, I just, it's hard to say. We see this in the NCAA tournament every year, where does one weekend translate to the next weekend? But in some ways, LSU's playing so well, and like you said, didn't run the legs off of a lot of its players. Maybe you like having that quick turnaround. I mean, they're going to have a long flight. It's a different arena, different background, all that kind of stuff. I kind of like the idea of LSU continuing this momentum.
Yeah, keep the ball rolling. Keep going. Keep continuing. They're hot right now. They're hot from shooting from the field. Running in transition, playing defense, forcing turnovers. So when you're hot, you just want to keep it rolling. So maybe that is a long flight to Spokane. So we'll see what it does to their legs. I don't know.
What's it going to do to your legs, by the way? How many connections you got?
I got a connection in Denver, so we worked that out pretty well. So only have
just one connection.
Okay. So I can't really complain a whole lot.
Adjusted the altitude a little bit in Denver. Yeah, you'll be all right.
I've heard it's got some beautiful scenery up there. I've never been to that part of the country, so I think I'm looking forward to seeing that part of the country. I'll hopefully, if they win in the Sweet 16, they'll probably have a day to check out, do some sightseeing. So we'll see. I'm kind of excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he's Reed Darcy. Reed, you got to go right, I know. So some final thoughts on this one. This was one of the more fun basketball games I've seen in years in the first half, and then it just turned into just one team was playing that way in the second half.
It was a fun basketball game, period, through all 4 quarters, I think. The environment was fantastic. And LSU played, I think, probably its best game of the season when you factor in the offense that they were able to get and the defense that they played against a really good offensive team. So, that bodes well for LSU's chances of making the Final Four. We've talked this whole season that they are one of the few teams that can make a run to the Final Four. And I think we're only even more confident in that based on how the first 2 games of the NCAA tournament have shaken out.
Yeah, LSU plays 2 games here at the PMAG this weekend. They go into triple digits in both of them, a 101-71 win over Florida State today. So we'll let Reed go right. You can read his stuff at theadvocate.com/LSU. And we will keep rolling here on the LSU postgame show.
Thank you, Zach.
Yep. I'm going to see if we can get Scott Rabalais to come on. He said he's about 5 minutes away from joining us. And, we'll read some more stats off. I know we've read a lot of them before, but just from the team stat perspective, I'm going to pull these up. Both teams were shooting the ball very well at halftime, although I would say from the LSU perspective, there was a little bit of reason to be worried in that first half because you're shooting the ball better than Florida State by quite a bit more, but you're only up by 1. And so that shooting percentages tend to even themselves out a little bit, and you think, oh boy, if LSU didn't keep shooting like this, they could be in for a dogfight here. But I think maybe what I'm missing in my thought process there is that LSU was getting such easy looks. I mean, we talk about Samaya Smith going 9 of 9 from the floor. I don't know, a few of those, I mean, they weren't all layups, but 6 of them might have been. I mean, she was not missing those layups. Against a team that's undersized, that was no problem for her. Not even that undersized. I mean, she was just getting good position. So the quality of the look. So anyway, LSU finishes 41 of 73 from the floor, 56%. At one point, they were shooting 60% in the second half. It went down in the last 5 minutes. Florida State shot just 35% from the floor. So we talk about like a fast-paced, good offensive team. LSU held them to 35% from the floor. LSU was also 16 of 17 from the free throw line. Sometimes that's been a problem for them. Not tonight. 16 of 17. Out-rebounded Florida State 46-37, although Florida State did get after them on the offensive glass. But, 19-13. Part of that is Florida State just missed more shots. LSU didn't have that many shots to rebound. In fact, they missed 32 shots and rebounded 13 of them. So percentage-wise, they were really good. 29 assists on their 41 field goals. So that's better than 2/3 of their field goals. And I saw Chicago Cheetah had the comment earlier that was championship ball movement. It was championship ball movement. It was, 29 assists on 41 field goals, 12 steals for LSU. Florida State only had 13 turnovers. LSU forced 12 of them. They were live ball turnovers. So they got 15 points off of turnovers, 52 points in the paint, led the game by as many as 36 points. So just a tremendous performance by LSU, top to bottom. And again, that's especially true in the second half. 51-22 in the second half. And at one point, gosh, what was the score? Their biggest lead, I believe, was 99-63. So that would have been 49-14 in the second half at that point. And then you kind of get, you get some of the last players off the bench, and the defensive intensity slips a little bit, and Florida State's able to, get a lot of those garbage points. But it was tremendous. Shout out to Tanaya Latson of Florida State. She scored the Seminoles' first 12 points. They were all her, and it wasn't like, it wasn't like they were playing badly. They were still in the game at that point, but she was the one getting it done, took the opening tip-off, and scored within 5-6 seconds. She had 16 points at the end of the first quarter. She didn't score much in the second quarter. She was on the bench for part of that quarter as well, but her final numbers, I think, also go to show you how well LSU played defensively in the second half. She finished with 30, but again, she had 16 at the end of the first quarter. Her 30 points came on 11 of 26 shooting. So she gets 30 points, but she needed 26 shots from the floor to do it. So I think that's a win if you're LSU. Like you knew Tanaya Latson was going to get she was going to get hers, but you made her take 26 shots to do it. Florida State's next leading scorer is Michaela Timpson. She only had 14 points, and she needed 15 shots to do that. Sydney Bowles, who had a big game against George Mason in the first round, she was only 2 of 10 from three-point range after going 5 of 5 against George Mason. She only had 10 points on 13 shots. So, Florida State did not shoot the ball well, really up and down. Latson, 11 of 26 is really the best percentage of anyone who took any number of shots. And on the other end, you have Anissa Morrow, 12 of 21. Samaya Smith, 9 of 9. Michaela Williams, 10 of 12. Flau'jae Johnson, 4 of 8. You know, that doesn't look as good, but you'll take 50% from the floor. So LSU put the ball in the basket, and Florida State didn't. Sometimes this game is simple, but a lot of that was they were moving the ball, they were getting easy shots, and they ran away with this thing in front of a rocking PMAC. Scott Rabalais is on his way down. He's going to join us as we wrap up this LSU Sports Insider postgame show. LSU advances. They will play NC State on Friday night in Spokane, Washington. Spokane, Washington, which actually, Reed didn't even say this. He's staying in Idaho. Spokane's not very big, and it's near the Idaho state line. The hotel rooms in Spokane were all either gone or super high priced, so he's staying in Idaho. You know, which is interesting. I'm checking, still no tip time on that game, but it'll be LSU, NC State, and Ole Miss, UCLA in that Spokane 1 region. And then the game's on Saturday in Spokane. South Carolina is going to be there. And South Carolina against – no, I'm sorry, that's in Birmingham. USC will most likely be there. USC still plays Mississippi State. It'll be Kansas State and Oklahoma are both there, and UConn's got the lead at halftime, so it's probably going to be UConn, and then USC plays tonight in the final second-round game against Mississippi State. By the way, on that note, LSU is the 6th SEC team to make the Sweet 16. Mississippi State could be the 7th. Obviously, they're big underdogs against USC. That's going to be a tall order, but 6 SEC teams, 6 of the 10 who made the tournament make it, and Alabama, by the way, lost a heartbreaker. That game ended shortly before LSU's. It went to double overtime, and Alabama lost, I think, 111-108 to Maryland. So it very easily could have been 7 SEC teams in the Sweet 16 to match on the men's side, and still a chance of that happening. But it would take a big upset for Mississippi State to do that against USC. So Scott Rabalais is here. Scott, why don't you grab that mic over there, sitting on the bag? Yep. Also outdressing me tonight is Scott Rabalais. You're just going to hold it. I like that. That's
not hard.
Yeah, simple and effective. Boy, I used the word virtuoso with Reed. That was a virtuoso performance in LSU's final home game, I would say.
Yeah, it was, it was one kind of game that you thought for a half, and you're thinking, my gosh, they're just going back and forth, just firing broadsides at each other. And then you look up, and LSU's winning by 30. I mean, it was yeah. I've covered a lot of LSU women's basketball postseason games, and that's one of the better quarters I think I've ever seen. You know, they outscored them 31-6. It was really something to see. You know, I think Florida State, give them their props, but it was a little bit fool's gold because in the second quarter, Michaela Williams didn't play at all because of foul trouble. Flau'jae Johnson went out with 2 fouls. And so once they got back on the court, that combination of them and Morrow and Samaya Smith and the way the guards were playing, it was just much too much for Florida State to contend with.
Yeah, I mean, I think Florida State is a fun team. LSU is a fun and good team. I don't know, not that Florida State's not a good team, but it's just another level where Florida State's so aggressive on defense. It's like they wanted every possession to end within 10 seconds. And at some point, LSU said, okay, fine, some backdoor cuts here, some buckets in transition here. And they were scoring in less than 10 seconds most of the time. And they would come down the court, and we've talked about the numbers a lot, but they shot almost 60% while the game was still in doubt.
Yeah, it was a great effort. 41 baskets with 29 assists. That's an incredible percentage. I think any coach would love to have that, and they only committed like 11 turnovers. So just the numbers, all the numbers bore out great things for LSU. And, they blew out San Diego State, and San Diego State was obviously overmatched. No offense to San Diego State, but clearly they couldn't hang with LSU, and LSU beat them by 55. But they scored 204 points in 2 NCAA tournament games. I don't care who you're playing or where you're playing. That's hard to do. It's certainly something that nothing LSU's ever done before. So the thing that got me going back to the assists was I've always thought when you see teams share the ball like that, and they were hitting backdoor cutters to Florida State was too focused on Morrow, so they'd leave Smith open and they'd hit her. Or there was a play where right where we're standing, Flau'jae drove the baseline from that side in towards the lane. Saw I think Morrow open, and just she was wide open for a layup. When they're doing those things, those are very good signs. That kind of unselfishness, that kind of chemistry really speaks well for LSU going into the Sweet 16.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And they will play NC State in the Sweet 16. As Reed and I were talking about, like, this is a team they beat before. And you don't, like, that's not to say this game is going to be the same, but to have that little extra boost of confidence in a Sweet 16 type game where you go, hey, we've seen this team before, beat them rather easily, 72-55 in that
82-65.
82-65. I'm sorry, yeah.
17.
I got the margin right, but the score wrong. On a neutral site game, like, that's a confidence boost. I know NC State's playing better. I would argue if you look at the last weekend, LSU's playing better. It'll be a different game, but you got to like LSU's chances.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, no criticism of NC State, but that loss has to be in the back of your mind. Now you can say it's motivation because LSU beat them and kind of embarrassed them. It was way back in November in the Bahamas, so these teams are playing on a different level, and have certainly been through a lot of games, a lot of battles since then. But it's got to be in the back of your mind thinking, we couldn't really hang with this team last time. So and then Kim Mulkey is the coach, and this is LSU's 17th Sweet 16. This is her 18th. So she's got the experience and has led teams to this part of the dance before, and she's got a very, very good record in those previous 17 Sweet 16 appearances. So you give LSU every chance to win. It won't be easy. I keep going back to the fact 2 years ago during the national championship run, their toughest game was in the Sweet 16. The game with Utah. I think they won by 3. The game in Greenville, South Carolina. It could have very easily gone the other way. Yep. And they don't even get to the Final Four, much less win the national championship. So these games only get tougher. But it's certainly a game you give LSU every chance to win. And I wouldn't be shocked if they were. Would you be shocked if they're favored? I don't know if I would be.
No, I wouldn't be. I mean, I think the line will be close, but you look at the way they played. NC State played very well today. They played this morning and annihilated Michigan State. So they, also an impressive team. Not to say that you can't lose the game, but I think if you're the 3 seed facing a 2 seed, given that context, you're feeling pretty good about the situation. It's also a fast turnaround. I mean, like Reed was saying, he's flying out Wednesday. I'm sure the team is too. It's a long flight in 2 days.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, it's like for usually after the second round, you kind of can take a deep breath and rest on your laurels just for a day or two. You can't do that in this situation.
No, they're going to play Friday. It's not a they were in a Saturday, Monday, first and second round situation, and now a Friday, Sunday regional. That makes it a little tougher to do that extra distance. You have to go so far, but NC State's in the same boat. Yeah, obviously, so UCLA, the top seed in the regional, they don't have to go as far, but they did play yesterday. They played yesterday, so that's a little extra. Good for them. But in this semifinal, this regional semifinal, it's a little bit of a similar thing for the 2 schools that are traveling across country to have to get to Spokane, Washington. So but it's familiar territory for LSU. And for NC State. They went to the Final Four last year, had an impressive run last season. Looked like they might not quite put it together this year, and then they ran off a really long winning streak in the ACC, which had some good teams in it this year. Duke and North Carolina, especially, and Florida State, of course. And so they're a team that deserves their respect. But I don't know, just familiarity with LSU just makes you think that they've got a great shot. I like the way their bench is playing. They've got a lot of bench scoring and bench depth that they're using these 2 games. Certainly like the way Morrow's playing. Flau'jae Johnson looks like she's playing well. She bumped knees. That's why she came out in the second half with a little wrap around, a little small band around her knee, but didn't ask to come out of the game. And then Samaya Smith, she needs to be the LaDasia Williams who went off in the Sweet 16 against Utah 2 years ago and gave him that unexpected game. The big 3 is great, but you got to have some other pieces if you're going to keep advancing, and that's where LSU looks like they have those pieces right now.
And tonight it was the big 4, and I don't know how you feel about it, but like Flau'jae Johnson came into this season getting a lot of attention, and rightfully so. But Michaela Williams has turned into a star in her own right.
Michaela Williams is, if I may say, kind of Magic Johnson-esque. She can play a lot of different positions. She can play the 4. She can play obviously the shooting guard. She brought the ball up court at times. She can do a lot of things for you. And at 6'1", she's just about as tall as Anissa Morrow. Maybe a slim bit shorter. But when her shot is falling early and I looked up and she was 5 for 5 to start the game. That's bad news for the for the other team, and the only thing that slowed her down was the foul trouble, and she ended up with 28 points in a game high for LSU, and that was pretty par for the course. Michaela Williams, she's a tremendous player. She was the number 2 recruit in the country, coming out of Bossier City 2 years ago. I kind of want to think that she was on that national championship team, but she wasn't. She was a freshman last year when they went to the Elite Eight, and now she's a sophomore.
She's chasing her ring.
And exactly. And she's arguably the most talented player on the team, and I don't think you have to make a very big argument to say that.
No, definitely not. She's Bossier City Magic, I guess is what we're calling her now. One more thing before we let you go, Scott. I thought the PMAC was rocking tonight. Very impressive atmosphere. Again, Reed brought this up, a 5 p.m. Monday tip. It's a late arriving crowd. Like at 4:30, there was barely anybody in here, but by 5:05, it was rocking. Yeah,
LSU got 2 tough assignments with the tip times. 9:15, the last game I think of the first round on Saturday night. I was done writing my gymnastics story in Birmingham before the game
and they
ended.
started at 7?
It started at 7, yeah, and had to do all the celebrations and championship awards and all that stuff, and I still finished before that. And so then you get 5 o'clock, and it's a little hard for people to come out there. I saw people walking from a long way to get to the arena, but the atmosphere was really something. And people were treated to a tremendous game by LSU overall, but really a tremendous and entertaining first half.
That first half,
it was thrilling. Like 50-49, LSU led, and it was just back and forth and very exciting. And give credit to Latson and the Florida State players, but give credit to the LSU fans too. They only lost 1 game at home all season. Their last home game to Ole Miss in the regular season, and it's become quite a little fortress for LSU to be sure. Especially in the postseason now, is a 3rd straight trip to the Sweet 16.
3 straight trips to the Sweet 16. He's Scott Rabalais, Advocate columnist. We're going to let him go finish up. You can read his column on the game at theadvocate.com/LSU here on the LSU Postgame Show. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
And you can just set that down over there. I'm going to keep rolling just for a minute. I don't know if TJ Brown is going to be able to join us or not. I know he's working on deadline. He said 8:20, so we'll see. But I think, let's see if I can get TJ's attention here and see if he wants to come over. Scott's going to ask him. He may be just about finished writing. So if so, we'll hang on and get TJ out here. This is the LSU Sports Insider postgame show. LSU defeats Florida State 101-71. We are brought to you by Our Lady of the Lake Health, the official championship healthcare provider for LSU athletics. And we're rolling. We'll have Reed Darcy in Spokane, Washington. So it won't be live postgame shows. He'll be live from Spokane. I'll be in my office, in my home office, talking to him. But we will do that after Friday night's game against NC State. And then, of course, if LSU wins Sunday in the Elite Eight against either UCLA or Ole Miss. So it looks like TJ is wrapped up writing. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up as well. He's wrapped up in writing, I should say. He's not going to be able to make it. So we're going to wrap things up here. Patrick McGee produced for us. Couldn't do this without him. And again, our thanks to Our Lady of the Lake Health, Scott Rabalais, and Reed Darcy. I'm Zach Ewing. This has been the LSU Sports Insider postgame show. LSU back in the Sweet 16.